Hello everyone, this time I got a battle for you, VC versus Ogre Khans, and this time I'm just going to go over what units we both have, and I'm not going to formally go over the list, but I will show you the different types of units, because I don't remember exactly what his characters had, and he had quite a few of them, so let's get into it. Okay, let's go over what he has. So he has a bunch of different characters. Vampire with 4 spells, and all his characters are Nosferatu. He's got Necromancers too, and they all have many spells, and he's got more spells than he'll ever need. He's even channeling on a 2-up. And here on the right you can see his Vampire Knights. He's got 6 of them, and that's a very tough unit to deal with. Remember in our last game, they ended up completely destroying the mercenaries in 1 round, chasing them off the board before scoring, so I have to find a way to deal with that unit, possibly counter-deploying or just redirecting the whole game, ideally. Okay, so here he's got Wraiths, 60 skeletons with spear and shield, 40 zombies, 40 skeletons with sword and board. Here's the 6 Vampire Knights, 20 Barrow Guard. Okay, so here's what I have. 3 times 1 Saber-Tooth Tiger, so they're moving individually. 1 unit of 3 Bombardiers. A giant unit of 65 Scraplings, biggest unit in the game. They've got spears. Over here we have 2 units of 2 Yetis, one of them as a champion, and 2 Kin Eaters. Okay, so here we have the 7 tribesmen with the Iron Fist in full command, and 7 mercenary veterans with Iron Fists and Thunderous Charge and Vanguard. And they of course have the Ether icon for +2 to dispel, because I'm making a list without magic. Here you can see my Great Khan, and he's got a Mammothide Cloak for protection, and the Kagadai's Maul for multiple wounds, and he's got the Crown of Scorn, so I can dispel 1 spell for free per game. Here's my Mammoth Hunter, and he's awesome. He moves 7, he's got Swift Stride, and he's going to be vanguarding up with the Wolf. He does have the Axebreaker Gauntlet, which is a magical Iron Fist that allows him to have a chance to break the enemy magical weapon. And he's got the Glittering Cuirass, so he is distracting. And he's got the Hunting Spear, and like I said, he's leader of the pack. That's why he's on a 50 by 50 millimeter base, so I can move him up further on the very first turn before anyone can move for the Vanguard move. So the way we usually set up the map here is we use one of the predetermined maps in the official the 9th Age map pack. So the way we do it is we roll for deployment first, or for deployment type first, before we set up the map, and that allows us to use one of the deployment specific maps. So we went ahead and rolled Refused Flank, and then we rolled for what map we were going to use, and then we rolled off to see who would choose which side. And that allows us to actually deploy the terrain on the side that we're already on without having to physically move all our models. So I won the roll-off, and I chose the side with the wall there, because we're playing Refuse Flank. And I liked having the wall there because I could defend it and have a chance there. And I didn't think the forest was going to help me because he doesn't have much shooting. That's why I chose that side. And because I chose the side, he was allowed to choose who would start deploying first, and he chose himself, and then he dropped his entire army. So he elected to do that in order to go first. So looking at this picture, you can see the 2 armies set up there, and I want to talk a little bit about the matchups. And I mean, what really happened here was a huge factor in the outcome of the game, because I was able to completely out-deploy him by knowing exactly where he placed every single one of his units. And if you looked at his list before, you would have noticed he has a lot of core units, and that's okay because he's got a lot of scoring, but it's just the Vampire Knights that are really gonna worry me, and none of his other units can really take down my ogres. It's zombies and skeletons, so they're just gonna tarp at me. But the only unit that can really do damage as a Vampire Knight, so that was the one I absolutely needed to know where they were going. And I forgot to mention, but we are actually playing flags, which is kind of interesting because I did not have many scoring units. I only had 4, and so the smallest unit I had were the 3 bombardiers, so obviously he chose them. But he had no choice but to choose the large units, so he chose I think the mercenaries and the scraplings, because the tribesmen had the character in it, so he didn't pick them. I picked the 40 skeletons, the 40 zombies, and the 20 barrel guard. So my plan here was to send all my vanguard units on that right side where his 2 scoring units were, and to try to clean them up as fast as possible, while the scraplings on the left held that wall and just delayed the advance of the Vampire Knights. Because the scraplings have spears, they're going to be good at holding the Vampire Knights there for the whole game. And plus I put in 2 wolves and the kin eater. Now the tribesmen are just there in the center to provide leadership to the scraplings, because the character has leadership 9. And the scraplings also have a foreman, which allows them to reroll, even though my character has the Hellfist, because the Hellfist doesn't work with insignificant units. That's why they have the foreman. Okay, so you can see on the right side the Mammoth Hunter joined to the Saber-Tooth Tiger that's about to vanguard up, same with the Mercs, and those Yetis there on their left. I kind of made a mistake here because I vanguarded a little bit too far with those units very aggressively, even though I was playing second, which allowed him to get a charge off with his zombies. And I also mispositioned the Mammoth Hunter. I didn't angle him properly, so the zombies were able to charge and get out of his arc, so that he wouldn't be able to do anything in my next turn. You'll see in the next pictures. Okay, so here's a really nice picture. You'll see what happened. So the zombies declared a charge on the Yetis that held, and the zombies with combat res were able to chase the Yetis down. The Yetis did get away because they have swift stride, but no one did any wounds to anyone, which is not surprising because zombies are pretty weak, and the Yetis fluffed their rolls. And by poor positioning on my part, he was able to get a flank charge with the zombies into the mercenaries. Fortunately, the mercenaries are a pretty hard-hitting unit, so they should be able to hold their own. And you'll see what happens later. And he did actually get the spell off, the Whispers of the Veil, on the Yetis, reducing their weapon skill, which helped. So there you go. The Yetis out of position. Mammoth Hunter can't see anyone, and the zombies on the flank of the Mercs. And for the Yetis fleeing through the mercenaries had to take a panic check, but they made it. Now at this point it's looking pretty ugly for me on that side there due to my positioning mistakes, but you'll see what happens later. Okay, so my turn 1. I go ahead and activate my dog on that left side to block the Vampire Knights because he deployed them pretty wide, stopping them from charging into the tribesmen. I'm going to go ahead and declare charge with the tribesmen into the skeletons, which is a pretty easy charge. I think I only needed a 6, and I made it. And the scraplings just go ahead and go up to the wall to defend it, and I keep my kin eater and other wolf there in reserve in case I need him later to block the Vampire Knights again. And also, in case I fail to charge with the tribesmen there, I have my wolf in reserve that can just go up and block the unit, so there's really nothing for me to risk. Okay, so over on the right side, it's my turn. So the Mammoth Hunter, he's got Troll Leader, so he has to take a stupidity test, but he's leadership 8 and he rerolls because of Hellfist, so he makes it. And he's going to go ahead and march for the field. Same with the wolf, because I don't need him there anymore, so he's going to go ahead and run up in the same direction. The bombardiers are going to declare a charge into the rear of the zombies, and my mercs can't turn to face the zombies yet because we haven't fought a round of close combat yet. And the Yetis are going to easily rally with the leadership 8 rerollable. Now over here in the center, I declared a charge with the Yetis into the barrel guard, so they make it in. And the kin eater is just going to move up to block the huge unit of skeletons. because I don't want them advancing down the middle. And we actually made a mistake here because I believe that in his turn we ruled that the Kin Eater could not be charged because the unit of skeletons and on the right of that huge unit of skeletons was blocking. But it turns out that if you cannot align the charging unit, you just align the charged unit. So you rotate the charging unit as much as you can, and then you rotate the charged unit. So that means the unit of skeletons could have charged the Kin Eater, but the Kin Eater is unbreakable and he has a regen of 5 up, so I did the math and it turns out they would have only done 1 wound per turn, so he would have held them there anyways, even if he was charged. Now, charging the Yetis into the unit of Beauregard turned out to be a huge mistake, and he elected to not pursue because he wanted to be able to turn around towards the other units that were coming, but he failed his leadership check and he was forced to pursue, which took him out of position, and now there's no one that he can see. So you can see there in the center that big unit of skeletons is pretty reduced now. He lost a lot of them and didn't do any wounds back. I got stomps, impact hits, I mean the whole 9 yards. Okay, over here you can see he lost quite a few zombies, and the mercenaries were able to turn and face him in the front by passing a leadership check, and they did lose 2 wounds to the zombies though, and the Yetis rallied. Actually, no leadership check was required because they won the combat. Okay, so here are some pictures of what it looks like after the end of the turn 1 for both players. Now in his second turn, he's able to swift reform the Vampire Knights into a better position to flank the tribesmen, and I'm pretty sure I was unable to redirect at this point. What I could have done is maybe use my second wolf to stop him from making that swift reform there, so to really block him up even more. I hadn't thought of that move there that he did, so props to my opponent there for avoiding that dog and getting to a better position. His magic phase, 6 dice to 4, he channels on a 2 up. Okay, he casts a Deader Eyes and he actually gets 15 zombies, which I let him get. And clarify if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you have to decide to dispel it or not before he rolls to see the evoked value. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so he casts Evocation, 7 skeletons into that skeleton unit that the tribesmen were fighting, and I decide to use my Crown of Scorn on it. Pretty sure I would have had to decide to dispel it or not before he rolls the evoked value, but yeah, I guess that's what I should have done. So here's a picture of the zombies that he raised, 15 of them facing the Mammoth Hunter and that wolf. Here's what it looks like after the combat. Only about 10 zombies left. Now here's an overview of the battle at this point. The whole right side is, I've won it. So now my Mercs and Bombardiers and those Yetis are going to come into the center along with the Mammoth Hunter. So it looks pretty dire situation for my opponent there. So it's my second turn, and I decide I'm going to charge the Vampire Knights with the block of Scraplings, and they automatically make it because I think, or they needed a 3 or something like that. They were close enough that they could just charge the Vampire Knights. And the Kin Eater that was there, he ran towards the center of the board, and the tribesmen are still there fighting the rest of the skeletons. So in this picture you can see the Bombardiers that were in the path of the Mercs, stopping them from charging the Barrel Guard. They actually make their charge into that zombie unit that he rose, and so that allowed the Mercs to have a free path to charge the Barrel Guard. And obviously the Mammoth Hunter charged in as well with the wolf. Oh yeah, here's a picture of the Kin Eater there in front of the 60 skeletons, and the Wraiths that had put a wound through him by the Reaper rule, so they can do a sweeping attack on him. Here, that unit of Bombardiers and the wolf eat that unit of zombies. The fight is over with the barrel guard. They completely crumbled, and the mercenaries are still intact with the bombardiers there and the mammoth hunter. So this is what the board looks like after 2 turns each. And at this point in the game we decided to call it because I've got his 2 scoring units. He has not got any of my scoring units, and I've only lost 1 unit, the Yetis. And I have position there. The Vampire Knights are going to grind against the Scraplings. All the rest of my units can go against the Skeletons, so it's pretty much over at this point. So when you think about this game and you compare even just the lists on paper before you actually get the dice out, you think, well, the Ogres have a huge advantage. Your list is more optimized, but that's not always the case, because I can give you an example. In the tournament on Sunday, we played very similar lists, and he actually ended up getting the victory. He even won the objective. So it's not only about is the list optimized. Sometimes you can just make a mistake with the positioning, and I lost my mercs in the last game, and that cost me the game. So it's not impossible, but I think in this game I made less costly mistakes. So I was able to take advantage of the fact that my list had way less core than he did. His list contained a lot of core units that pay core tax. So just the amount of redirection that I can do without him being able to do anything about it is very, very, very helpful in managing the matchups. And the fact that I was able to counter deploy him and get the units that I wanted against the one unit that worried me was the Vampire Knight. So as long as I could manage that matchup, I knew I could get a good score here on this one. So in the future, what I would say is maybe look at getting some units more from the special category, and definitely some tools to deal with chaff and redirection, because otherwise those big blocks are just going to get redirected. What else? There were a lot of points spent on characters that I feel could have maybe been spent on harder hitting units, because the only hammer unit in my opponent's list were the Vampire Knights. So that's what I would suggest for the next one. As for the Ogres, I think in the beginning I made a kind of a mistake of vanguarding the units up when I was playing second. Why do that? There's really no point. Just stay where you are, and if he goes forward, then you can charge him instead of just simply getting charged. And that you saw in the beginning, it cost me. It caused problems for me where I'm fleeing through my own unit and stuff, and I got away with it because it's just zombies. But if those were barrel guard, it would have been a different story. So that's what I mean when you move your units up like that. You got to get the positioning correct, and think twice. Think where can he charge me? So yeah, that was what I could have done better on that right side. Also, charging the barrel guard with 2 Yetis, bad idea. Don't do what I do. What I should have done is obviously just dodge the arc and then try to get behind them. Okay, well that's it for this battle. It was a little one-sided, but it was a good afternoon of gaming. We rolled some dice and got out the miniatures, so it's always nice to do that. And I'd be playing against VC again. It's always fun, vampires. If you have any suggestions on how I can improve the video, let me know. And feel free to comment on any strategy that you would have used, how I could have moved my models better, or my opponent, maybe you saw something that he should have done. Just let me know, drop me a line, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay, thanks, bye.